In this video, we are going to call the to API, which is get requests, so that we can map the data that we got from the API and map it to our dropdown, which is category and owner. Let's do that. The first thing you need to do is you need to call async data, because we want to load the data first. Hence why we are doing it in async data. Put it async because we're going to use async await combo. Axios, then let categories equals to Axios. You will know why we are not using await in here in shortly. Now get HTTP localhost 3000 API categories. Copy this and then change this to owners as well as owners. So we're gonna use a new function which will be equals to await promise dot all. I will explain to you what it does, and then we pass in these two functions. I'm sorry, these two API calls, not functions. I don't want to confuse you guys. And we call response, let's just call it cat response, and then owner response. So what promise.all does is that it runs these two API at the same time, because categories and owners APIs are not dependent on one another. We don't want to run this first and then only we run owners. We want it to run parallelly at the same time. So hence why we are using promise.all, and we pass in the categories and owners, and once we get the response, we set it to cat response, which is categories, and owner response, which is owners. That's all it is. And final thing is we need to return so that we can use the data and map it to the template. So categories, and then we take this cat response and it will be categories. Owners will be owner response. You must be wondering, wait, owners. You must be wondering, why are we doing dot notation, which is categories, and dot owners? If you go to our server, and if you go to routes, and if you go to category.js, and if we see the response, it responds with success true and categories. So we need to access this categories in order for us to get the data. So let's go back to product.view, and that's the reason why we have to dot categories and dot owners. If you want to see the content, you can just simply respond this, and let's go to Chrome. Let's refresh. I haven't started the server yet. Let's go to our server and Notman server. And then we refresh. And if you go to console log to see the content, and as you can see, it returns success and the categories, which is the array. We need this array, hence why we are passing it cat response dot categories. And remember, whenever you do await, async await, you want to do try and catch, because we want to avoid our app to crash. So hence why we have to do try and catch. So when there's an error, we're just going to console it. For example, if we remove this await, it will return an error. So if we refresh, see, it doesn't crash. It doesn't crash the app. It just show that type error promise.all is not a function, which is a good thing. But if you don't have try and catch, let me remove try and catch and see that and save it. And if we refresh, we're gonna get this really like ugly error, which will be bad for user experience. So we want to return that. Instead of that, we want to show some sort of error on to the user in a friendly way. We don't want to show this kind of like error to the user. So let's go back and let's revert back to try and catch. And now we can take this, not this one, this categories, go back to here, and now we can loop it, v4 to loop category in categories. So the value would be the ID of the category. We want to send the ID because if you go to our server again, if you go to models, product.js, as you can see, we are storing an ID of that category and the ID of that owner. Hence why we have to put the ID in the value. So category.id. And you have to add colon key because it is important for loop in Vue. It just is necessary. If you don't have this, then it will show an error. It says that elements in iteration expect to have key element, which you have to send key, and then category, and then we want to change this to category dot type. Okay, and then finally we want to copy this, want to remove this, and change this to owner, owners. Same thing, we want to send the ID because if you go to product.js, we are sending the ID. And finally will be a name. Okay, and let's go to our server, which is the front end server, and go to our Chrome. Let's refresh this page. Okay, let's check. Okay, now it's empty. There must be a reason why, because we didn't add a wait here. I forgot to revert back. So let's save it and let's refresh. This error will disappear, and here you have it. You can see there's a book and there are two owners, which is Brett Stone and Walter Isaacson. In the next video, we are going to send all the data that we type in, which is in the input and text area and the photo, and we compile all this data and we send it to the post API. I'll see you guys in the next video.